Hello.
afternoon. Hi. How are you, Nital?
I'm good, thank you very much. How are you?
I'm good, considering what just happened. So, anyone who has been potentially waiting for us to join for the past 5 minutes, very sorry about that. We literally had a very nice chat with Nital about, our personal life and other things we're working on for pretty much like 10 minutes before going live. And on the time of going live, I had an electricity just break up or whatever you said that, like everything just plug off into my house. So here we are. Anyhow, technology is hopefully with us. So, without further ado, thank you for being here. Tell us everything about yourself, Nital.
Thank you for inviting me. It's so nice to be here. So I'm Nital Full, and I'm a corporate career coach specifically focused on helping female professionals navigate the corporate workplace in a way so they can be heard, recognized, rewarded, and promoted the way they really deserve to be. And just a little bit about how I got here. So I've got over a decade's worth of corporate experience. And even though I was good at sort of meeting my goals, exceeding my goals, and working really hard, I often found it really difficult to be visible enough, to be assertive enough, to have an impact, and to really influence others the way I really wanted to. And when I looked around me, I started comparing myself to the other extroverts around me, possibly because they were more noticeable in the way they did things. And I tried to emulate that to think, okay, if they're doing this and it works for them, it should work for me. And you can imagine that that did not work for me. So I had to work really hard to figure out, because I'm a natural introvert, what will work for me? How can I lean into my introverted qualities and navigate the workplace in a way that is actually more authentic to myself? And once I did, I looked around and thought, I'm not the only one who's feeling like this. There are so many women who have gone through these challenges and they've overcome it, or they're going through them right now, or they're going to go through it in the future. So I'm here to help those women to just really try and overcome those challenges and understand that there is a path to success for them. And I guess on a little personal note, I also have a 15-month-old daughter. And I really want for when she's a bit older, and so in about 20 years' time when she's working, for her to look back at this and sort of laugh and think, why did we even have to do this in the first place? So that's my aim.
I love that. You've mentioned so many interesting things. First of all, I love what you were about and the focus that you give and the work that you do with your clients. In a nutshell, it's obviously much more than that, but I think it's about visibility, right? It's about making sure we don't hide in the shadows. Obviously, it does have different layers as to how it takes forms. I also very much like when you shared a little bit more about the specific work that you do in the context of the support that you give. And I think, obviously nowadays there are some people out there who don't even identify as a gender. I mean, we can't put people into boxes, but what I know from the work I also do with women is that even within identifying as a woman, there are so many variables. And like you said, I think you're touching on something super super key, which is the whole extrovert versus introvert. And again, even within that, there are some variables and we can't just put one side or the other, right? But I think this is very important because when it comes to self-promotion, and I know this is what we need to talk about today, I think it's important that we discuss that there is no one way. And before we do that, let's just start with starters. From your experience, from the work that you do, why would you say self-promotion is important?
So let's actually start with that visibility bit first. So in terms of what does it mean to be visible? So for me, being visible is not just about being seen. So it's not just about turning up in the office every day, being at every single meeting, being involved in everything. But it's about being seen and heard and making connections as well. And then that self-promotion part is, if you think about the word promotion, is about selling or showcasing yourself. But again, it's not just about your achievements, and it's more than that. So it's about showcasing your skills, your desires, your interests, your goals, your experience, your knowledge, all of those things. So there's quite a lot within those two categories, and it's super important. And you talked about, obviously, the gender part. When I was thinking about the importance of being visible at work, I started to think to myself, okay, so why is it important? And for me, it came down to working hard, isn't just enough, like to get you recognized. And when you, if you've done a presentation, you usually hear people say they're only going to remember 10 to 30% of what you say, or just a very small amount, or just 3 things. So that means that it's the same thing that applies at work. Your leaders who are looking after a lot of people, they're not going to remember everything you've done. They're not going to have all of it at the forefront of your mind. So you have to put in the work to be visible, to do that self-promotion part if you want to navigate the corporate ladder in that way. And what it does, being visible, is that it just creates opportunities. So whether that's opportunities for you to get involved in something new, or whether it's opportunities for you to gain advocates for your work, because the more people that know about what you do and what you're interested in, the more likely they are to advocate for your career progression. Or it's opportunities for you to learn something different, to grow personally and professionally. So there's many things there, but those, you heard them, they don't just apply to females. They're not gender specific. But where I thought about, the whole like female professionals and why it's important specifically for them, we know from like a lot of research reports, like by McKinsey and Lean In, that females are still sort of dramatically underrepresented in senior positions in the workplace.
In those rooms, yes.
Exactly. And that means that anything they can do to be more visible, to accelerate their career, is definitely worth doing. And then the other part of it is, when you are being a visible female leader in the workplace, or just a visible female professional, you're going to act as a role model for others. So you're going to inspire, you're going to encourage, and you're going to motivate others around you. And for me, that second part of what I just said is so invaluable.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you were saying in your introduction at the beginning about your daughter, right? And setting up an example. I think this last part is super key, because I also share that with my clients. I think we don't owe it for ourselves. We owe it for others around us, or even the future generations. If we're not the one taking the stand, us two having this conversation right now live on LinkedIn, well, we are potentially, not to say we can blame the two of us, for example, for not showing up if we were not to show up, but we are part of a movement that, the more we actually have conversations like this, the more actually it will become natural. Right now, it seems still, an effort, let's put it this way. But I think to join on the whole, positive momentum side of things, what you just shared here, I think is a reminder that whoever is listening to this, who is struggling with visibility in the workplace, you don't have to carry the load on your shoulder. Like, don't feel being visible mean that you really have to go above and beyond your comfort zone. You can actually find allies. I think it's an important thing that I'd love to have your input on. I mean, let's talk a little bit more about what have you seen are potentially the challenges that get in the way of visibility and self-promotion?
So the common things that I see, and it's stuff that I've experienced myself, so I'm definitely speaking from experience. So it's mostly threefold when it comes down to visibility. Like, firstly, people don't really know why they need to be visible and what they can really gain from it. And so women who are, or anyone who's experiencing that, you usually find them sort of heads down, deep into their work, delivering fantastic results, but not really doing the work to get visible, and then probably finding themselves being quite static, or, having a little bit of a slower career progression as a result of that. And then the second thing is that they don't know who they need to be visible with. So often with these people, you find them doing stuff to be visible, which is great, and self-promoting, which is fantastic. But they're doing it with people that they're already close to, that they already admire, that they have a great relationship.
The comfort zone people.
Exactly. But these people may not have a direct or a great influence or impact on their actual career. So I wouldn't say it's wasted time, and it's not wasted efforts, because you'll definitely gain something from that, and that person is going to be able to help you in some way. But they can sort of shift their focus onto other people that may matter a little bit more in that sense. And then I said 3 things. And the last one is that they don't know how to be visible and in a way that's authentic to them. So that's what I need to say.
I love a 3-part model. So you've got the why, the who, and the how. So let's unpack this, if that's okay with you. First of all, why? How can you how can you identify your why? Hopefully I'm not going to confuse people here, but what would you suggest for anyone who is definitely struggling, or at least, this is funny actually, because yesterday I had a conversation with someone, and I literally posted about that a few minutes ago. essentially this person came to me and was like, I think that, my CV is not in the right place, but apart from that, I think I'm doing everything I can when it comes to my job search. And actually, just listening to you now, I think that she didn't necessarily know why she needed to do other alternatives, because she was just applying to jobs. And this is already great, right? But we know that the applying to job is only 30% of the market. And I feel like, the takeaway I'm getting from you is wherever position you are in, knowing your why, knowing your purpose is super key. But some people don't even have that degree of awareness that they need to get their why, right? So what would be your recommendation for anyone who's like, I don't see why I should dig down and dive into what my purpose is, because I should just be recognized for all of the hard work, all of the contribution I'm making to the business already. I'm expecting people to find out for themselves.
Yes, that's a great question. So, I mean, what we spoke about earlier in terms of the importance of being visible definitely covers off part of the why in terms of why they should do it. But their personal why is definitely something that they need to obviously have the self-awareness about, do a little bit digging in terms of understanding where is it that they want to go. So they need to get very clear on what their sort of goals are. Because you have, I know I've been asked this question before, but you have people that may not want to sort of navigate the corporate ladder upwards, but they might want to go more sideways. They might want to specialize in certain areas. So do they need to be as visible? Do they need to be sort of trying to get that promotion and, impressing those leaders? But what I would say to those people is that there's still so much benefit of being visible, because if you are, like, let's say you're becoming a specialist, but any work that you do, it will go much further if you have that visibility. So if you're creating a new methodology, if you're implementing a technology, for example, the more people that know about it and the more connections you have, the bigger exposure you can have, the more you can make sure it's adopted in the right way, the more you can make sure that you speak to the right people so it gets spread in the right way as well. So it's a very obvious, like, why they need to do it at whatever stage they are in their career and whatever direction they want to go into. So once they figure that out, it's just about understanding, like, this is their personal goal and this is how they need to be visible in order to get there, because it's not the same way. You mentioned before that one size does not fit all. So it's just about working out what's going to work for them.
I like that. I like how you tie it up as well, knowing their personal purpose and why is actually linked to knowing what their career goals are. Because I think this is a very important point that the two of us discussed behind the scenes as well, is we're thinking, okay, how can we find the right title, right angle to make sure that we capture everything that we want to cover, right? And one of the things that the two of us discussed, obviously, is the fact that visibility does not mean the same for everyone. So hopefully anyone listening to this, your takeaway is not going to be, okay, I need to get out there, I need to be, shown, I need to develop my network. Maybe depending on what your career objectives are, there are different ways that you need to make yourself visible. So I think going back to your point, which is, okay, where do you see yourself heading next when it comes to your career? And it doesn't have to be up the ladder, obviously, like you said, I think is a very important takeaway as well. Because also, obviously, you're going through that. I'm just before that, but considering women potentially navigating motherhood in the meantime of maybe returning to work, the visibility side of things might not be on their priority of agenda, but they might also want to, let's say, for example, maintain a minimum of visibility to think about the promotion for the next year, but for the time being, they're just happy to find their feet. So I think this is a very important point. Thank you very much for that.
No, I agree, actually. So there might be some stages in your life that actually you're not able to really focus on that visibility. And I've gone through that myself as well. And that's okay. You might have periods where your visibility drops, but as long as you understand that sort of why, because you're focusing on other priorities, that's absolutely fine. Just keep those sort of connections going with key people in the organization as much as you can. And that's the best you can do.
Yeah, I tend to use the analogy of gardening. So obviously, feel free to tell me if I'm losing you there. But on the gardening side of things, especially if you're at the time of your life where you don't necessarily want to get out there as much because you have other priorities, you don't need to do further plant seeding or dropping seeds in the whatever the earth. You just need to water what you already have, and what is already flourished. This is me with my gardening. Done. Let's move on. So the second part of what you've mentioned on the 3-step process, we've talked about the why. We've talked. The second thing you mentioned is the who. So how do you identify the who?
Yeah, this is a lot harder actually, and it isn't always as simple as it seems in terms of it's your manager's manager or anything like that. I mean, obviously, it really depends on the type of organization you work in and the way it's set up. But what I would do if you're trying to find out your who is first of all speak to your manager. Understand if you are going for sort of promotion or you're trying to get a little bit more exposure in certain areas, ask them to help you in terms of identifying who it is that they should speak to, because your manager is there to help your career progression as well as sort of getting the work done, whatever goals your team has. And they should be able to make those connections for you as well. If they have a good network themselves, they should be able to make those introductions and get you really involved there. So that's a really big part in just finding who's just speaking to people, finding out through other conversations with peers as well, just who is that is going to be critical to your career. And you may not find it all at first anyway, that it might take some time and you might find out you've been speaking to one person, but actually someone else is a little bit more relevant. That's fine. Like none of these connections are going to be wasted time at all.
Yeah. I'm going back to my example from the conversation we had yesterday on that person who was, actively looking for a job and was focusing on the CV. I've asked her about other avenues that she could take. And I said, for example, recruiters reaching out to people in her network. And the one thing she said is, I can't find them. Do you have anyone that you can send to me? Because I can't find them. I don't know where they are. And I think it goes back to the second point here is also, I think, manager, great starting point. Sometimes, unfortunately, your manager is not necessarily your best advocate. Sometimes your manager is on mat leave. I mean, there are a lot of variables potentially that are there. The one thing I would add to what you say is also the importance of being curious. Like you were saying, speaking to other people. Don't necessarily pressurize yourself with a set agenda, or I need to find 3 people, or I need to find X, Y, and Z decision maker. Just make sure that the focus on the who is, okay, let me go explore what's available. Maybe not even within my department only. Maybe I can have, and I've seen that with some of my clients, and that this has worked. I don't know your experience on that, but I could also have a sponsor who is not someone I directly work with or doesn't directly know about the department, but is someone I know I can go to for advice and tips, but also to one way, shape, or form is linked to, higher hierarchical links in even my own department. So I think yeah, sorry. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I was going to say sponsors are super helpful, and I have had one that's made a really big difference in my career as well. And I think the main thing to add to that is if people are looking for a sponsor, again, like you're looking for someone who is able to advocate for your career progression, has some good connections around the organization. I mean, it's a great thing if they also have an understanding of the performance evaluation process. But if they're new to the organization as well, that's totally fine if they're the right sponsor for you. But the main thing is that, people tend to look for someone who's sort of senior, who have good relationships with other senior people, but they have to have time for you. So just make sure whoever you're looking at, if you're trying to get the guidance and advice from them, then make sure they do have that time to give you too.
I think that's a good point. And you tell me if I'm going too far, but because we are on the who part of this, I also think that it's important to make sure you connect with people who might be on a similar journey as well, whether internally or externally. But I feel like there is also so much value to be gained when you're sharing experience or when you're navigating a similar journey. Again, every organization, every department, every team is different. So you might not be able to 100% relate with the person that you're in touch with. But I feel like there is that nice sort of support system that you can potentially put in place that means that when it comes to the visibility, when it comes to finding the right people, not only you have the people who advocate for you, you've got the sponsors, you're speaking to your manager, but you might have people who are on a similar level, who've got similar objective that can help you keep the momentum going as well when the others are not necessarily as available, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we'll probably talk about this in the third section of, how people can be visible.
Let's go there.
Getting involved in, okay, we'll go there.
Yeah,
getting involved in other sort of projects and getting involved with other teams and working on different things, supporting other people with some of their goals is also another way to get you visible. And you may not think of it as first, but other people do recognize that. And if you're making good connections with your peers, again, they're going to be advocates for your career progression. They may not be able to have a say in whether you get promoted or not, but them just sharing great stuff about you is going to help you in some way. So the other things in terms of the how, so I look at the 4 Ps. So I think about the 4 Ps. They're not the marketing 5 Ps, but one of the words the same. And we covered off projects, so just getting involved in something, getting involved in other teams. The other one is promotion. So this is like your typical sort of sharing your achievements and your knowledge, your expertise, etc., your results of what you've done. But the main thing about all of these things, I should have said before I introduced the 4 Ps, is it's all about folding in showcasing and self-promotion into your day-to-day activities. It's not about making it a separate sort of task. So we've done projects, we've done promotion. The next one is sort of participation. So this is about contributing and adding value wherever you can. So whether that's in meetings or in workshops, in ideas, in problem solving, if you're asking questions, answering questions, if you're challenging others, these are all great ways to be visible. Like, you don't have to say, you know, I landed this client, I got this result in order to be visible. Like, people are going to recognize your thought process. They're going to recognize your confidence. They're going to recognize your interests. And that's going to bring you at the forefront of their mind if there's something relevant for you later down the line. And then the last one is, so we've done projects, promotion, participation, and presentations. So this is about finding opportunities to share your thoughts, your ideas, your values, your work. And if you can't find an opportunity to do that, try and create one. So ask for 5 minutes at the end of an agenda of a meeting and just say, I'm actually wanted to share something I'm working on, just want to get some feedback as well on it. And feedback is also another way of just making sure that you are being visible and you're showcasing yourself as well. And often when I say that, people start thinking, actually, but feedback is me asking for like improvement areas, and it's going to remind people of the stuff I have to do to improve. But actually, you're getting people to recognize what you've done well first, before then they are telling you like what you could do to improve. So those 4 ways are great ways of just folding in this promotion and showcasing yourself in a nice, humble way, I guess.
You know, this is what we get when we got Nitel in. We've got 3, step approach when it comes to self-promotion. We've got the 4 Ps. So hopefully you've got some nice takeaway. And I'm looking at you right here. Perfect. I love what you said, especially when it comes to participation and presentation. I'll go back to these ones because I'm already listening to some of my clients sort of like, yeah, but what if I just don't want to be, standing up and feeling like I'm bragging, talking about, prompting a question to just show how much I know or how much I can challenge someone. Like, I feel like it opens up the whole world of like, how do I make sure that, yes, I'm visible, but not in a way that I feel like I'm showing off and bragging?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've heard this before and I've felt it before as well. So I used to think that sort of humility is my superpower, and it is a superpower. But I was actually going down the extreme humility route and batting off every single compliment that I could. So for people who ever talk about that they're worried about bragging, I would first get them to just close their eyes and just imagine someone that they know that does brag. Okay, and I'm sure we all know 1 or 2 people like this. And think about 2 things. So think about, 1 is their communication style, and the second one is context. So let's start off with communication style. How do they come across? They're probably very confident. They're probably very happy to share their achievements. They're probably quite assertive in doing so. And that's great. But none of those are indications that someone is bragging. And I'm sure you agree with that. But the second one is the context. So if someone is bragging, like, usually I find that they're oversharing, or they're exaggerating what their contribution was over their teams, or they are sort of forcing this into the conversation or sharing it with irrelevant people at the irrelevant time. And mostly the people who are worried about coming across as bragging are just not doing that. So when they say this, and I get them to imagine this, they realize actually that they're not, they would never actually come across like that, because they would choose their moments wisely. They wouldn't be oversharing. They'll be thinking about the relevant things to share. So then it's more about a mindset shift. It's more about identifying, having that self-awareness that you talked about earlier, identifying when they are like feeling like they're bragging, identifying when they can, start reframing that into, actually, I'm not bragging. This is about me explaining how I can add value to someone else. And that's the one thing that really changed my thinking on it. When I started to think, actually, me sharing what I can do well and the value I can give is is not about me. It's actually about how I can help others. Made it a lot easier for me.
I think it's a very good point. Communication and context.
Absolutely.
I love it. I know we were off to a rocky start with the internet power down, but I can't believe it's already been almost half an hour. In the final minutes that we have left, is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't talked about for anyone listening to this, definitively trying to navigate their corporate ladder when it comes to self-promotion?
I actually just wanted to reiterate that the one thing that you said about no one size fits all. So I talked at the beginning that I tried to emulate what other extroverts are doing, and I'm sure other introverts have tried to do this as well. But one size does not fit all. If something works for someone else, it might not work for you, and vice versa. But just don't let that deter you from trying to be visible. Just get really clear on your sort of visibility goals, and then try and experiment and have a little bit of fun trying to figure out, how to be visible in the right way in your organization, and speak to people, get a bit of feedback on it as well. And actually, I just wanted to share that in October and November, I'm offering some free visibility workshops, which are one-to-one coaching workshops for 10 people on a first-come, first-served basis. And the idea is that you will get clarity on your visibility goals. So what we spoke about earlier, the who, the what, the when as well. And then you'll get an understanding of what are your current challenges, what's holding you back from being visible. And then you're going to walk away with a little bit of a plan on how you can take action to start being visible right now. So something you can start working on immediately. And the reason I'm offering it free, I should say, is because I'm just testing out a new workshop structure design that I've been working on last few months. And I'm just really eager to speak to people about it and get some feedback.
Amazing. Talking about self-promotion, if you're looking to make it and take it to the next level, make sure that you reach out to Nital for it. Amazing. Thank you so much for all of those priceless tips. I love the 3-step process when it comes to self-promotion. I'm taking away the 4 Ps. It was a pleasure to have you, Nital.
Thank you very much. Lovely to speak with you.